Welcome, everyone, to our August resource group for Start a Brewery. Thank you all to those of us who have come and joined us live. Summertime, as I say to everyone, is kind of tough. For those of you who are here, Andrew, Dana, Todd, your crew, if you'll put your address and your name and how people reach you in the chat, that would be great. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First of all, I always like to go back to our mission, why we're here. And when Candace and I started this whole concept, the mission hasn't really changed. It's to raise the bar for startups and growing breweries through education while lowering the barrier to entry for those who are looking to live their dreams. So that is, has been, will be our goal. Our format today is, as always is, we are going to take a minute to thank our sponsor. We're going to do a little bit of an interview format with Todd Olander, who's in our spotlight today for our contributors. And then we're going to talk about any questions you have, whether that has to do with malt or whether that has to do with anything else that comes up. So that's kind of the order of things. Before we dive all the way in, I wanted to talk about our upcoming events or recent events. We had our third quarter educational webinar, which we do in partnership with Andrew and his craft beer professionals crew just recently. And that was with Jeff O'Brien at Chestnut Cameron. He did a really great presentation about raising equity for your new business legally. And that was a gray zone for me, and it's a lot less gray now. So I really appreciated that. You can find that on our YouTube channel and rewatch that. Actually, right now it's on Craft Beer Professionals. It will be on our YouTube channel.
I'll give you that link.
You're going to get me that? Okay.
Nobody right now.
All right. So we did have two recent podcasts that came out about operational strategy. The first one on systems was a conversation between Mary Bretman of Beverage Business Builders, Ethan Tsai, who's a brewing operations consultant and a big part of Metro State University and Tivoli and Cigar City. He's done a lot of things. And Nancy Trigg of the Trigg Performance Collective. That was a cool conversation about systems in your brewery. And then we had a part 2 of operational strategy that's all about people. And that was with Matt Hughes of USI Insurance and Larry Chase, who's a great Game of Business certified coach. That was a really cool conversation about the important people in your startup or expanding breweries and how to find them and how to empower them. And then we have a new one coming up that's about setting goals. All of this is in the context of business plan, and we're going to move into more of an open zone soon. But this conversation is going to be with Mark Bowman, who's Triple Bottom Line Brewing Consultants. Y'all may know him from Left Hand, and Matt Del Vecchio with Duckfoot, and Tim Myers with Strange Craft Beer Company. So that's going to be really cool. All different sizes of organizations and lots of time in the industry to talk about that. Harvest Host has been our sponsor for all of these particular podcast episodes, and All About Beer helps us with our podcast series. One more, our fourth quarter webinar, educational webinar with Andrew and the craft beer professionals is going to be Fred Kaplan from Stony Hill Advisors. And he's going to talk about considerations for purchasing an existing brewery, which I think is becoming more and more of an active conversation. We'd like to say thank you to White Labs. Neva couldn't be here with us today. She's under the weather, but she wanted me to especially say that you can stay up on anything new with White Labs by following their Instagram, which is at White Labs Yeast, and find everything they have to offer there, as well as tons of resources at whitelabs.com. They began as home brewers searching for higher quality yeast. And today they say they stand at the intersection of science, education, and craft, constantly striving for perfection and in the process continually raising the bar in the art of fermentation. They were the industry's first pitchable liquid yeast, and they've gone from there to a complete revolution in the way it's propagated and packaged. They are most definitely a big voice in the industry, has been, will be, will continue to be. So let's do the fun stuff. Todd, let's dive in and get into the contributor spotlight. So first, thank you for being here. Thank you both for coming to talk about malt. So let's talk about Olander Farms, Root Shoot Malting. Who are you and what do you like to do when you're not wearing those hats?
Well, I don't get much time to not wear that hat, but
okay. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Mike Myers. He's our maltster at Root Shoot. He's been there for 5 years now. Awesome. He's here to just kind of help with some technical questions and things if they arise and I don't have the answer to them. So I guess getting into it, I'm Todd Olander, founder of Root Shoot Malting, and also not the founder of Olander Farms, but I am involved in the family farm that's been in Loveland, Colorado since like 1926. Fifth generation farmer, and I'm just trying to like come up with a way to continue farming in this area, and malting was the direction that I decided to go. Trying to get just a little bit more value out of the crops that we're growing, and um, very interested in beer and brewing. And I've been kind of around barley my entire life. We grew Coors barley for many years. Probably 15 years, I think. So before we started growing malting barley for ourselves, so just been around farming and malt, well, not malting, I guess, farming and barley my entire life. So starting in Malthouse kind of made sense, and yeah, it's been a great adventure so far. It's been difficult at times, but we're powering through, and it's great to and just be in the industry and meet all of the different people that are involved in the industry. There's just so many different backgrounds of people that decide to go towards the brewing industry, and so it's great mix of people. I guess as far as doing things besides malting and farming, my wife and I like to travel quite a bit. I like to ski as much as I can, so mostly winter activities. Summer doesn't really allow for many other things besides the farming side of it. So.
I've heard people say that if they can do some industry travel, that's ideal because they can call it work.
Yes, exactly. That's usually what ends up happening. So
there you go. Well, we'll just try to create some cool stuff for you.
Yeah.
So specifically in the malting context, I understand you're also starting your own line of spirits. Is that correct?
Yes, yes and no, I guess. So we're providing the grain for it, and then we've just partnered with a distillery in Boulder, Colorado, called Vapor Distillery. It's also Boulder Spirits is kind of their brand on the shelves. And they have a traditional pot still, and they've focused on single malt production. And I think it just makes a lot of sense for us, since we're a malt house and we grow all the barley ourselves and everything, to go in that direction. So that's where we've kind of focused our attention for now, I guess, on producing single malt whiskey. Not actually the distilling piece of it, but coming up with the recipe and the grains that we're going to use, and just kind of having a partnership with those guys, and kind of feeding off each other, trying to figure out like what direction to go, and what we're seeing through the distillation process and the aging process and everything. So yeah, we just finally released our first single malt whiskey. It's 5 years old. The bottle says 4 years old, but it took us a year to actually get through all the paperwork and everything to actually be able to sell it. So yeah, we're excited, and we'll have a new release kind of every year for the foreseeable future if everything goes well.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
And it'll be, I guess, a different recipe every single year too. So we'll kind of come up with different grains each year, just for fun, I guess. So limited releases every year that it comes out.
A good way to showcase what you're doing. I'm getting some feedback from somebody. Not sure where that's coming from. So when I say specifically, what do you do with or for clients, and what problems do you solve? Do you work with breweries in the malting capacity to showcase malt, or to help them kind of showcase more of their recipes? So how do you kind of work with, how does the craft zone lend itself specifically to help craft breweries?
I mean, it comes back to mostly collaboration and just working together, and having a good relationship with all of your customers, and just kind of feeding off each other and coming up with different ideas. We produce, I think, how many different malts at this point? 13 different. 13 different malts. We haven't specifically gotten a whole lot of people requesting different malts, and then less like kind of tweaking a recipe for them. It's something that we're open to, but there hasn't been a whole lot of that. So we've just kind of experimented on our own, trying to come up with different malts, and then gone to our customers after that and asked them what they think of it. I guess early on, in like 2016. So we work with Station 26 here in Denver quite a lot, and they helped us tweak our genie pale recipe, I guess. So that's what they use in their juicy banger beer, and so that's kind of the most back and forth that we've really experienced. There was just like kind of lightening up the color, or I mean, it mostly kind of came back to color, or trying to like make it a little bit more sweet or something like that. So that's really how we came up with our genie pale recipe, was going back and forth with Station 26. But we haven't really experienced a whole lot more of that type of questions. But we're always open to it. And we try to give as much support as possible and try to be open to all our customers when they call. They're not just like, they call one of us, either me or Mike or Craig. I mean, we have a pretty small team. I think there's 6 of us at the Malthouse, so it's not like it's hard to reach one of us. And then people are running into issues, we try to troubleshoot with them. We'll do like sieve analysis for them, or give them our certificate of analysis. I don't know, just try to troubleshoot if they're having any sort of issues with it. But we've been lucky to not have a whole lot of negative feedback. So there's always somebody, but
Always, always. That's what I was going to ask, though. I think that there's a lot of probably questions that come your way. Do you end up educating a lot of your brewers about what malt is, how to use it, how best to use it, how not to store it or treat it, or any of those kinds of basics a lot?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, early on, everyone was just asking for a 2-row barley. And so we're like, well, what kind of 2-row barley? Because we used to have quite a lot of different varieties to choose from. And we've really kind of shrunk that down to just one variety at the moment. We're still kind of experimenting with a couple different ones, but yeah, a lot of brewers were fairly uneducated in that space, it seems like, as far as like just choosing something from a catalog and being like, I just want that 2-row. And so I think we've done a really good job of holding events, or at least one event every year called Field Day, where we bring as many of our customers to the actual barley field, let them participate in the harvest, just get them out on the farm so that they can have a stronger connection to the actual barley that's growing. And then we also open up the malt house as much as we can too, to get visitors through there, educate them on the malting process and what goes into that. So we're continually just trying to educate people about what barley is and what malt is and what goes into that whole process.
Totally makes sense. So how did craft beer become part of your world?
Well, like I said, kind of goes back to growing barley for Coors. And then I spent 17 years in Fort Collins. So New Belgium and Odell and all that were kind of building their empires, I guess, or in the early 2000s. So a lot of that, just kind of seeing that whole industry grow, and then really just talking with breweries and taking brewery tours and figuring out that they're not sourcing any of their ingredients from Colorado. So, I mean, that's kind of really where the aha moment came from. We're like, well, we've grown barley for Coors. There's just like one missing piece. So that's when the idea of a malt house kind of popped into our head. So I had no idea really what a malt house even looked like when that idea surfaced.
That's fair. So you haven't been making beer on your stovetop?
I haven't, but Mike has an extensive background in homebrewing.
Yep, I homebrewed for about 17 years now, before I made the journey over to Root Shoot. So I had a lot of background in, reading books and trying to figure stuff out, and making beer and submitting it to contests and getting feedback. And so that's kind of where my genesis moment happened at. And then I went to school at CSU at the same time, Colorado State University in Fort Collins, and it's, some consider that the mecca of craft beer. And to spend my early 20s frequenting all those places really was exciting. Drove some interest.
No doubt. Awesome. I'm still getting that feedback. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Do you guys have another speaker, Todd and Mike, over there? I'm not sure what's happening. Anyway, we'll keep going. So what's the coolest project you've ever worked on related to the brewing industry and your role in it? That could go anywhere.
Go anywhere.
I got one.
Yeah.
We did a project for Colorado Proud during the pandemic, which was pretty darn cool.
Nice.
In fact, we partnered with Left Hand. Um, they came up with a recipe, sent it out to a bunch of breweries, and 120 or so breweries signed up to brew the same exact beer using the same raw materials, put it on tap, and they were basically using the proceeds from that beer to help, help the breweries during the start of COVID. So, we delivered 120 breweries worth of the same materials, and then they brewed, and we got to go out and taste all those as well. So to be able to see, the same materials being delivered at every place, but what comes out on the back end is a touch different everywhere. So it's kind of eye-opening for processes and procedures, and just sometimes skill level or knowledge, or you have all these other factors in play, but it generated a lot of money for the brewing industry at that time for donations, and just a really cool project.
That's an awesome. Do you want to add to that, Todd, or are you good?
I'll relate it back to farming, really. So we are making that transition to regenerative farming, and that's been quite a challenge, honestly, to grow small grains in that kind of system. And so I guess it's just really trying to figure out how to produce, well, I don't know what the correct word is, but get the chemistry in the soil working properly, and no one else, I guess, is doing it in this area. So there's no one else that you can like really go and consult with. So we're kind of just like the leaders in that area as far as the farming methods that are happening in this region. And so we're just running into some issues with kind of either yield. We haven't really run into quality issues. It mostly is related to yield and just trying to make this system work for us. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and we're still in that challenge, I guess. We haven't figured it out yet completely, but it's something I believe in. I think it's something that we can figure out with just the proper crop rotation and just sticking with it and learning as much as we can every day.
It sounds like that could probably be one of the most problematic and complex things you work on.
Sure.
How about in the malt house? What's the most complex or problematic project you've run into there?
Well, figuring out how to malt was the biggest thing. Yeah, so I guess in 2016 when we got the drum going, I had never really malted anything. I took a course in Canada. It was like a 2-week course, and everybody's equipment's different. And we have equipment from Casper Scholes from Germany, and they basically just tested the equipment and said that it works to specification, and then sent us on our way. So a lot of that was a lot of trial and error, just trying to figure out what settings and things we needed to use, and that was a pretty difficult time. Although never really ended up with too many bad batches. We ended up probably over our 560 batches. We probably have like 15 batches at the most that we have not hit our quality standards. So that's pretty good track record. I think the equipment does help us in that sense, but just trying to figure out what to tweak when does it need more water? When do we need to kind of change germination temperatures? And then kilning is still an ongoing, not struggle, I guess, maybe. I don't know, just trying to hit your color specs all the time is pretty difficult to do. When you're kilning 20,000 pounds at a time and trying to hit a color range of 3 points SRM, it's difficult to do. Continually getting better at that too, but those are some of the struggles that we're continually facing. It's pretty easy to make Genie Pale or our Pilsner malt or distiller's malt even, because those don't just have a whole lot of color. They usually come out very similar in color. So I don't know if you want to speak any more to that, but that's some of the challenge that we run into on the malting side.
Yeah, I think not so much a challenge for us. We have a very steady supply of the same raw materials, same barley coming from our farm, so it doesn't change much. Where you see the change is at the crop year change or changeover, but for other malt houses, inconsistent raw materials just compounds everything down the line. So you're running different protein levels, different germination schedules, different kilning regimens. So it becomes extremely difficult when you don't have a very consistent supply of barley.
Yeah, that's definitely the most important piece is having high quality barley and consistent barley. So, I mean, the crop year changes, you're always going to see some sort of little bit of difference in either like water sensitivity or even protein levels from year to year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As long as we adjust, we're in good shape.
Yeah, I think crop has that issue. And I don't know how everybody handles that adjustment from year to year if you're trying to make the same product. Okay, well, let's launch into your 5 tips and tricks or best practices. Where should we go with this?
Good question. I was going to kind of just run through I don't know, the malting process, I guess, and kind of sensory type things that we do. So I guess the 5 we do hot steeps quite often. So hot steep is basically just making a malt tea. So we do that for every single batch of the malt that we make. So we do a lot of sensory on that. And I think if brewers could start to use that, they could start to kind of dial in what that finished beer is going to turn out to be if they can use that over and over again before they actually start the brewing process. And there's not a lot of guys that are continually doing that. We've preached that for a long time. So I think if you can get that just gives you familiarity with your raw ingredients. So, and then you can kind of maybe get some more consistent results from your brewing process if that's the case. So,
for sure.
The housekeeping thing. Yeah,
I think it's a vital piece that is sometimes overlooked. Just understanding your raw materials, how fast they filter, what color they are, what do they look like. And there's a bunch of things that you can discern from that hot steep that can just impact some decisions on the brewing side.
That makes sense. What did they do before they were doing the hot steeping? Was that more about just chewing the grain?
Yep. Yep. And that doesn't really give you the same results. I mean, you can tell a little bit, but I mean, it just helps to, like you said, you just watch it filter through the filter and see how fast it goes, and then just smelling it, tasting it, just you get a lot more sensory than just throwing a few kernels in your mouth and chewing it up. So
that makes sense.
Well, that'd be the first thing that I would do. Second thing is ask for a certificate of analysis and really kind of figure out what that means, which I know that it can be overwhelming at times, but if there's just like a few parameters that you could choose from to that you want to kind of base your brewing days off of, I think that would be super helpful. Whether that's I guess protein level, friability. I guess friability is probably the most simple thing. Friability, if you're not familiar with it, is just basically how easy something crushes. They use it in the pharmaceutical industry a lot to kind of see how easily pills crush. But we run that test on every single batch, and that gives us a good idea of how well we've malted the grain, but also it can tell brewers how easily it's going to crush when they're running through the mill, so they can kind of adjust their mill. If it's really high friability, then they can adjust the gap on their mill, maybe open it up a little bit because they know that it's going to crush really easily. If it's lower friability, then you know that you can maybe tighten that up. So I think that's probably correlates back to milling more than anything. So on the friability piece, at least. I'm not sure exactly what else people want to look at. I mean, our extract is typically around 80, maybe 82. Our protein levels are doing pretty decent. So that's a good something to look at, but I think I don't know, like it depends on everybody's process of if they're actually able to correlate the extract to their process or not. So there's some times where we'll have batches that are like super high in extract and people have issues with getting getting all of the extract out of it. And then there's other batches where we're like, man, I don't know, that's like a 79.5 or something. And some people have really good results. So it's just trying to just at least take a few numbers from your COA, and we're more than happy to like help people diagnose like what the COA means. But anyways, if you're just instead of going in there blind when you're throwing your grain into the mash tun, it'd be best to at least look at your COAs and see what it means, and see what it's telling you.
Is that something that's a big difference between a commercial producer and a craft producer?
For sure. I mean, you can always ask for a COA. I think any of the larger guys will provide that. But there's probably not somebody that you can call and then have the right person answer the phone, I guess. So that's a big difference between kind of working with us or working with say BSG or something like that. It's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to get to the person that you want to actually talk to. So yeah, I think that goes back to kind of the relationship and trust piece of just wanting everyone to succeed. So like we want people to succeed just as much as we want to succeed. So
okay, so COA.
yep. Look at it.
Ask for it.
Oh, and ask for it. Yes.
Start there. Just ask for it.
And then I guess that goes into actually like calculating your yield and see how efficient your brew house is. I don't know if a whole lot of guys are doing that either. So just and then yeah, and then I guess that kind of correlates back to like take your COA, see if you're getting the same consistent results, and then kind of look at your brew house and then see if you're getting the same results out of your brew house. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Because maybe your malt is a little bit subpar, but you're getting good efficiencies, or maybe your malt is really good but you're getting bad efficiency. So maybe you can kind of tweak and figure out like what's happening during that process that's causing those issues. So, yes, calculating that. I guess the next one would be traceability. So that's something that we really focus on. Is like we know every step of the process, like from actually sourcing the grain that we're going to plant. So we source our grain actually from eastern Colorado, just a little bit east of Denver. Comes off another farm that grows certified seed. So we take that, and then we have about 700 acres of barley we grow every year. So there's 700 acres to choose from that we bring into the malt house each year. So like it probably consists of about 10 fields. So, I mean, you can't really get any more traceable. Part of changing our farming practices, we haven't applied fungicides in the last 5 years now. I think that really, I mean, that's mostly to help with soil biology and everything and not kind of killing the good microbes. But I think that will also result in some, I don't know, just less herbicides. Well, not herbicides, but like fungicides that could be kind of going through your process. Like we take pride in knowing that like when you're buying malt from us, like I said, it came from that farm, went to this farm, got planted, we harvested it, and then we deliver directly to the malt house. So I mean, just to start with that, and your carbon footprint, like we've moved maybe 100 miles, probably even less than that to begin with. And then once we malt it and we send it out the door, then we go another 50 miles. So you're looking at like 150 miles of carbon footprint for that malt. And that all comes back to traceability, I think, as far as like not a lot of movement going on in our operation as far as it's what's happening, and we know every step of the process. Yeah, and then I guess that comes back a little bit to like single source barley. So a lot of like larger malting facilities are going to blend different barley varieties as well. So I think that helps with consistency. in your brew house. So, I mean, we just have one barley variety, which is Genie. That's what you're going to get every single time. It's not going to be a blend. We're not going to blend to spec. You may get like a blend of 2 batches or something like that, just to kind of even out the consistency between those 2 batches. But as far as the actual barley variety, it's going to perform like very, very, very similar every single time.
That sounds like a
Yeah. So we have some guys that like are just using 100% root shoot, and like they are really familiar with how to brew with our grain, and they just knock it out of the park all the time. So I wish we had more guys that would commit to that, but yeah, I mean they're consistently getting like an extra like barrel of beer every time they brew. So it's pretty awesome.
awesome.
I don't know if I have a 5-foot one. It says cheat sheet for malt selection, but I'm not.
We were chatting a little bit before this about what we thought was important, and we feel that ordering, like maximizing your potential order, because sometimes there's some discounts offered by getting a full pallet worth of malt, and storage inside of your breweries is extremely important. So we see a lot of our customers that are just starting that don't have space to take full pallets, or that was never part of any of their thought process on their build out, was where do I store 2,000 pounds of grain, or how much am I going to order at a time? Those are really, really important operational things to think about for starting your brewery.
Yeah. If you can store at least a pallet, probably 2 pallets of malt, you can save a ton of money, no matter who you're ordering your malt farm, right? Like instead of getting a delivery charge for 600 pounds, because that's the only space that you have, every 2 weeks or something like that, and you get a pallet every month or something, then like you can just see the savings adding up pretty rapidly if you can have the space to do that. So like, that's very important to dedicate space for your malt storage while you're doing and planning your brewery.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
I'm still getting that feedback thing. I don't know.
What does it sound like?
It sounds like the ocean roaring every time I talk, but then it stops after it just goes for a little bit and then stops. So I'm not sure what that's, I don't know what that
is it us? We sound okay?
You sound great to me, but everybody else is muted, so it has to be one of us, I think. But right now I don't hear it at all.
Weird.
So Andrew, do you have some questions? I have a couple, but I don't want to like steal the show here.
Yeah, I definitely have a question. It's been fun to watch the rise of craft malt. Like, what are some of the best practices you've seen tap rooms use to like have staff educate guests about the value of craft malt and just using ingredients like yours?
We focus a lot on us getting into those breweries and spending some time with their staff, but to take that a step further, we invite their staff to the malt house. Whether it's educational or team building, or they just want to see the process, right? There's a little bit of a disconnect between your raw materials and the actual front of house staff sometimes. So, we encourage our customers to bring their entire team out and see it from start to finish. It's not too many. We're very unique that we have the farm piece along with the malt house. And it's not very often you can go stand in the barley field and then see the malt house and then connect all those dots in a row.
Yeah. I mean, that is something that's difficult to do, and it's difficult to get like all of the owners, I guess, to kind of buy into that and take the time, and not everyone sees great importance in that, but we try as hard as we can to like, I mean, if these guys are choosing to use our product, you may as well like promote that you are using it, like I think the Craft Malt Guild, I guess, has the Craft Malt seal. That can be helpful. We also have like a 10 tacker that people can hang up in their tap rooms to least maybe some of the customers are going to ask about it. But then it also has to come back to front of house, like we were talking about, that has to be educated. So, but I would imagine like 50% of our customers have brought some of their front of house people to the tap room. It just makes for a fun day. We're pretty cool to hang out with, and
If I do say so myself, yeah.
But
It
then
might be
they really do a great job of like we I don't know, we hook them up with a bunch of t-shirts and swag and everything, and they do a really great job then after that of telling the story a little bit more. So
it might be hard to even do like as a case study, but it'd be super cool to see like if a brewery brewed a beer with non-craft malt and switched to brewing the beer with all of your malt, like how it would increase in sales based off like promotion of just putting it out there that they're using just all craft higher ingredients. I need to see.
yeah,
One of the
I would
things
like to see
we
that.
did for training our staff here for this little tap room that I've been working with is during the staff training, we brought out the malt, showed the different kinds of malt, showed different kinds of hops, and just let the staff see the raw ingredient. I think to take that one better, and maybe we do this over the winter time when it's slower, is to do that hot steep with the staff. I think that would be kind of a cool way to show them a little bit more about what the malt brings to the beer.
Agreed. Yep, definitely.
Pretty cool. It's not like it's rocket science. We did that for RMMS. You guys brought down the malt and did the hot steep with us, and we everybody tasted that and did kind of that sensory analysis. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, no, that was a great event. That's like right before everything went to crap. So.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Dana, do you have any questions, or are there areas that you see in your world that are malt related that are worth a mention or a shout out or a warning?
Yeah, I had a question on it. You know, I know you guys do the hot steep method. Have you ever done the Congress method? And is there any? It seems like it's kind of gone away in favor of hot steep. Is there any reason to do the Congress mash these days, or is it just pretty much all gone to hot steep?
Well, a lot of our lab results are based off of the Congress mash, but the extra equipment to process it, and then there's some conversation in the malt world about the Congress mash versus the hot steep, and you know, the hot steep is closer to what brewers are actually doing in the breweries with their mashing regime. So there's a little bit of a lean towards that becoming a standard.
Yeah, a lot more the hot steep is more kind of a sensory thing more than actually measuring extract. So yeah, our malt analysis is always measured in fine grind. Fine grind? Is that all?
Yep. And they have a coarse grind too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah, the equipment to do an actual Congress mash is very expensive, and yeah, and I do think that people are going to start going away from that because it doesn't really correlate to the actual brewing process anymore.
So what is that mash, just for people who are listening and watching? Is that more of a lab approach?
Yeah, they run it through a bunch of different temperature steps and times, and so almost, I mean, it's similar to decoction mashing, but it's a little more intense. And you just have, I think that there's just some arguments out there that that's not what's really happening in the craft industry. So it's not as relatable.
Very cool. I wanted to ask if somebody wanted to focus or feature more of the malt in their beer, besides just adding more, are there some strategies that you can suggest for people to highlight more or utilize their malt selections in a better way or more effective way?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of like recipe design, like I think about what flavors I really want to shine. Do I want to make a English pale? Well, I need to start with maybe some quality fruity yeast, and so yeah, I just kind of work the process backwards. Like I kind of have an idea of what it tastes like in my mind, and then I use some of the other attributes like the yeast selection, and then maybe some hops, and then, what kind of base malt do I want to use? Do I want to use something with a higher kiln on it? Do I want to just start with a very blank slate and then use specialty malts, with just a standard base malt? Or do I want to move something higher? I don't know. For me, I'm thinking of the process and backwards, what I want it to taste like, but I don't know if that made any sense, but
It does. I think the different places that you can get the flavors, whether that's in the grain or the hops or the yeast. And I think knowing more about each of the three components, and I suppose
Yep.
the water piece too, I'm not neglecting that, but I think it's
Yep. lesser
considered. So when you're doing your malting, are there some grains that you would allow to, I don't know if germinate's the right word, but to actually grow a little bit longer or a little bit shorter? Or is that the variable that you play with in terms of making better malt, higher quality malt?
A lot of times it's germination time, I guess, and then temperature as well. So like a lot of malt houses that are on like a really large scale, let's say Coors or something, like those guys are cranking their batches of malt out like every 5 days or something like that. They turn it. So, which is really crazy that they can do that. But we're like kind of slow and low is our method of malting, which means low temperatures and take our time to make sure that it's completely modified before we actually go to kiln. So the lower temperatures usually equals higher alpha amylase, which we shoot for, and then a lot of times you'll have a higher extract as well, due to your lower temperatures during germination. And then I guess as far as kilning goes, I mean that process based on a lot of different factors, I guess. Depends on the temperature outside. It depends on the humidity outside, so that we get a lot of variability in that. And when during kilning it hits different temperatures to kind of move it through the process of kilning. I don't know really where I was going with that, but anyways, we're trying to hit the highest quality possible. I mean, that's been our goal since the beginning. So starting with growing barley as sustainable as possible and really focusing on quality over quantity, which we've started with that, and then also just like the consistency of our malting equipment and being able to like control every step of the process very scientifically, I guess. And it's like the same every time. So I mean, quality has been like our mantra since the beginning. So
do you think that led to a lot of the awards that you just cleaned up on? What's unique about those individual malts that won?
Well, I mean, they're all different recipes, obviously, but probably same crop. I mean, they're all the same crop year too, so maybe that has a lot to do with it. Our protein level kind of is a little bit higher probably than the industry norms. We're like usually around 12% protein, and I think that is beneficial to the flavor. I think that's helpful to why we're winning a lot of these sensory awards. It's not affecting any of the brewing. People are having success brewing with it still, even though the protein is a little bit high. So, but I think that really helps with the flavor.
So do they, because I'm kind of clueless, do they judge with a hot steep kind of approach, or do they judge in a finished beer?
Hot steep mostly. It's all just sensory. So they start with like analysis in the lab to make sure that it hits the specs. So you have to hit your color spec, and then extract to make sure that it's just
has to be functional.
Functional, yes. And then from there, if it doesn't pass that, then it gets kicked out. And then from there, it is sent off to the first round. And I think there's like 80 people, or maybe even more than that participate in the first round. And it goes through 3 rounds, and it's all blind. Nobody knows where it's coming from. So it's pretty similar to GABF, I guess, but I guess I'll be a little bit biased. You're not drinking alcohol, so you're not
Just
losing,
numbing the senses.
not numbing the senses over time, I guess. So, yeah. So I don't know. It's a really, there's a lot of steps that go into this process. So like it's completely blind. So like when we won all those awards last year, it was quite amazing. That we came out on top with all those awards, and it's pretty crazy. So I mean, because it's very stringent. There's no way to kind of like, I don't know. You have to. I mean, it's a very stringent competition, I guess. So there's no like, nobody's cutting. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess no.
It's a tough competition.
It's a tough competition, I guess. Yes.
That's fair. So another question, if you had a brewery come to you today that wanted to feature all root shoot malt, what kind of, what would make your ideal clients, where I'm going with this? What would be their best practices? What would you like to see them do to showcase your malt in the best way?
I think that they start with a conversation about quality. Like that's where it generally starts at. Like they're looking to make more flavorful beer, better beer, more consistent. And so that's where generally the conversation starts at. So the ideal customer would be coming and then maybe asking for some of the hot steeps and wanting to try maybe what they were using comparatively, so they can see what a difference, just a change in the raw material provider is going to do for them. Just kind of working through some of their recipes. A lot of people are very open about what they're doing, and just the conversation, just spending time with them and understanding what's important to them, and then making suggestions from our end, like, hey, this is what I think you will benefit the most from, is maybe you should try this. And a lot of that is, some baby steps, and you make a beer and we evaluate it and have the discussion. Yes, this is where you want to go. You like it. Cool. Let's keep trucking forward.
Yeah.
Having the conversation.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think also like people that are kind of focused on environment a little bit as well are some of our ideal customers, and like keeping money in the local economy, things like that. People that are focused in on sustainability, traceability, all the things that we're trying to hang our hat on, and then also just supporting local communities as well. So
And taking good care of the malt when it's in their hands, and
and
making sure that it's used in a timely manner and stored in a proper manner. All of those things would be important, I imagine, on a routine basis.
Yeah, definitely.
Any further questions? Dana, Andrew, you got anything else up your sleeve?
Just had a question on organic malt. Is that a possibility for root shoot? Is that something you do or have considered doing?
It's not what we're doing yet. There's a possibility. It's going to take a few years. It takes like, I think 3 years to actually get a field certified organic. And we haven't even gotten to the first year yet. So it's a really difficult thing with weeds, I guess, is our main concern with that, is just trying to have a clean field, because that can really screw up your malt quality. I mean, we run everything through our grain cleaner, but a lot of times if it's the same size and weight as the barley, it's really hard to clean out. So we don't want to, we ran into that actually like probably 4 years back, where we had some thistles that were pretty bad in one of the fields that we probably shouldn't have even harvested. Anyways, we ended up with thistle seeds that were making it all the way through the malting process and then all the way into the finished malt, and that's just not something that we want to ever run into again. So it's a possibility. It's going to take like really dialing in this type of regenerative no-till practices to get to that point. So stay tuned.
What's your distribution footprint like?
Majority is like 95% just in Colorado, but we send some to Alabama quite often, and then
Nice.
we send some to not the Dominican Republic, but
Oh, geez. Honduras, we just sent some
Honduras.
to Honduras. I'd say the majority of it stays in state, mostly Metro Denver. But we do have a small handful of folks that are buying outside of the state. We just sent some to New Hampshire last week. So logistics becomes an issue at that point. Just because
Are
it's
we
really
seeing any sort of correlation between, award-winning beers and using, malts like yours?
Mm,
Like, on the
Not-
premise of like higher quality ingredients?
I think there's a handful of beers that's happening with. I think there was 4 or 5 World Beer Cup awards this last go round that had our malt in it. But I don't know if there's like a direct correlation at this point. I'd love there to be.
Totally, right?
That would be super handy.
It would.
Very cool. Well, thank you both. I really appreciate you, Todd, Mike. Thank you for making the time to be here.
no
Thank you
problem.
again to White Labs for sponsoring us today. Stay tuned. We've got Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever you call it. We always put our announcements out for our resource groups, for our podcasts when new episodes are landing, and for anything else that's happening in our world. So stay tuned to all of that. Looking forward to the next episode of our webinars with craft beer professionals, and our next podcast lands next Tuesday. So again, thank you to everybody, and have a great, dry, not too hot afternoon.
Appreciate you,
Sounds
Laura.
good. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.